So, there's a version of World of Warcraft that you can't play. Not because your PC can't run it, not because your subscription lapsed, but because it literally does not exist in your country. And if you spent any time on WoW forums or classic subreddits or anything like that, you've probably seen it come up. Somebody drops Titan Reforged in a thread. A bunch of people reply with "give this to the West," and then the whole thing dissolves into the usual Blizzard discourse. But here's the thing, most people have no idea what Titan Reforged actually is. They've heard the name, they know it's in China, they know it's classic related, and they know people are jealous of it. So today I'm going to try and explain it. What it is, how it works, why it exists, and what it means for the rest of us. Let's get into it. Before we get started about Titan Reforged, let's spend a couple of seconds talking about something that a lot of Western players genuinely don't know. First of all, something you've got to understand is that WoW in China is basically a different game, run by a different company. In China, Blizzard doesn't operate World of Warcraft directly. Instead, they license it to a company called NetEase, who run the servers, handle customer support, manage the business side, and crucially, have a lot more creative input than you might expect. This arrangement has existed for a long time, and for the most part, Western players have never thought much about it. China gets WoW, we get WoW, cool, everyone's happy. Except in late 2022, the licensing deal between Blizzard and NetEase fell apart, and for about a year, from January 2023, WoW in China was just gone. Servers shut down, Chinese players couldn't log in, it was a massive deal over there. And then in 2024, the deal was renewed. WoW came back to China. And when it came back, both Blizzard and NetEase had something to prove. They needed to give Chinese players a reason to come back, a reason to care about the game. And Titan Reforged is at least partly the answer to that. It was announced in July 2025, it launched in November 2025, and is genuinely one of the most interesting things done with the classic formula. Officially, that is. The simplest way I can describe it is this. Imagine somebody took classic WoW, Burning Crusade, and Wrath of the Lich King, all three, threw them into a blender, turned everything up to level 90, and then randomized the order you experience it in. That's basically Titan Reforged. More specifically, it's a special server type called the Chrono server, or the Time server in Chinese, where the content from all three of those expansions exists simultaneously. There's no classic phase, then TBC, then Wrath, it's all there, all at once, all turned up to the same level cap. Every single raid in the game, Molten Core, Blackwing Lair, Karazhan, Serpent Shrine Cavern, Naxxramas, Ice Crown, all of them are scaled to level 80, all of them are 25 player raids, and instead of being released in the order you remember, they get drip fed to the server in a randomized sequence week by week. Think of it like the old fated system from retail, where one raid was fated for the week, except instead of just buffing the raid, it's literally changing which piece of WoW history you're playing through. That means in any given week, the server might send you to Molten Core, or it might send you to Ice Crown Citadel. You don't know. Nobody knows. I mean, unless of course you just data mine the surprises away, of course, which, let's be honest, is exactly what happens. Anyway, leveling is faster than standard classic. There are experience boost events to help new players get to level 80 before the big raids unlock, and the whole thing is built around keeping people engaged long term, rather than burning through content and going quiet. And this is already a fascinating concept on paper. When you look at the individual features they built for the server, it gets a lot more interesting. First up, legendary weapons are no longer a one and done pickup. Thunder Fury, Sulfuras, Atiesh, the weapons that defined an era in normal classic. You get them, they're amazing for a phase, and then they get replaced by something else from the next tier, and you never touch it again. Not on here. On Titan Reforged, as new raids unlock and the server progresses, you can actually upgrade your legendary weapon to keep them relevant. There are upgrade items that drop, bind on pickup, that let you push your legendary up to the item level of whatever content is currently live. So Thunder Fury can genuinely be a best in slot weapon deep into the server's life. Weapons from vanilla that you've never seen matter past certain phases can become endgame items again, which is nice to see. Also, the central hub city for the entire Titan Reforged server is Dalaran, the floating magical city from Wrath of the Lich King. Which does make total sense. I mean, you've got classic, TBC and Wrath players all sharing the same world, and Dalaran is the one neutral city that sits above it all. Literally. Now, onto the tier set overhaul. Classic players will know that tier sets have always had 3-piece or 5-piece, sometimes 8-piece bonus structure. Titan Reforged throws that out. Every tier has been redesigned around a 2-piece and a 4-piece bonus, the modern system from retail. This sounds like a small change, but it fundamentally changes how you think about gearing. You're no longer grinding for 5 specific pieces. You're making choices about which 2 or 4-piece combos you want to run. Because they've added sets from Zul'Gurub, Anchorage, and other non-standard sources, there are combinations that have never existed before. Legendary gear can also be mixed and matched across sets, so your endgame loadout ends up being a lot more unique. And there's also a universal currency called Titan Embers you can earn through high-level quests and dungeons and gathering professions. You spend it on crafting materials from vendors, and every profession interacts with it in some way. For Western Classic players, this is actually a really big deal conceptually, because Classic has always had a very limited crafting economy. Gold is king, professions are mostly supporting roles. Titan Embers creates an entirely new economic layer on top of that. PvP has also been rebuilt a bit too. Resilience, the stat that's defined PvP itemization for most of this era, is completely removed. Instead, the gear's base stats are adjusted to compensate, and there's a passive passive system that handles the PvP balance side. All PvP realms on Titan Reforged are faction balanced, which is something Western Classic has struggled with for years. And finally, transmog, collections, features that never existed in Classic. You can actually use cosmetic gear for appearances, build out a wardrobe, and care about how your characters look beyond pure stats. For retail players, this is just another Tuesday, but for a lot of Classic players, myself included, this isn't a great change. Seeing the actual armor people are wearing was a big part of the immersion that came with Classic. But then again, I don't feel this Titan Reforged thing as being an overly Classic server, rather just something new to try out. One of the things that's gotten a lot of attention is the phase structure of Titan Reforged, specifically the order in which they unlock. Data miners dug into the server files and found what looks like an 11-phase plan for the server's entire life cycle. When you look at it, genuinely bizarre in the best possible way. Phase 1 is Molten Core, standard enough, but Phase 2, Serpent Shrine Cavern and Tempest Keep, which are tier 5 raids. Then Naxxramas in Phase 3, then Trial of the Crusader and Zul'Gurub in Phase 4, Sunwell and Zulaman in Phase 5, Ulduar in Phase 6, Karazhan doesn't show up until Phase 7, Blackwing Lairs Phase 8, and Courage is Phase 9, Icecrown Citadel in Phase 11, and then you've got Mount Hyjal and Black Temple, which is TBC's Tier 6 content, at the very end of Phase 11. I mean, what a bonkers experience this sounds like. Really outside of the normal, fully restructuring the norm into something unique. And that's kind of the point. The server's designed for people who know Classic so well that they're bored of it. The randomization is meant to keep genuine uncertainty in a game that many players have essentially memorized. You can't just follow a BIS list you memorized back in the day. Now the obvious question is, can you, a Western player, actually get onto these servers? The short answer, officially no. And in practice, it's genuinely difficult. Chinese WoW requires real name verification through the Chinese government's identity system. This isn't just a regional client download. You need a verified Chinese national ID and a Chinese phone number linked to a NetEase account to even register. VPNs don't solve this problem because the registration barrier isn't about IP geolocation, it's about identity documents. For most Western players, this is a dead end. Now there are grey market services that sell pre-made verified accounts, which some people have used. I'm not going to go too deep into this territory, but it does exist, and if you look for it, you'll find it. Now the risks are real, account bans, scams, losing money, so if that's a road you're considering, go in with your eyes open. But for 99% of Western players, honestly, you're going to be watching this one from the sidelines. Now here's the final point I want to make, and why the WoW community should really care. Titan Reforged represents something we've been asking for years. Not in the specific features necessarily, but in the concept. This is Blizzard taking classic WoW seriously as a platform for experimentation and new design, not just as a nostalgia delivery machine. Season of Discovery was a step in that direction, but Titan Reforged is further. It's more ambitious, it involves new changes, new economy systems, fundamental shifts to how progression works. It treats the classic player base as an audience that wants something to grow into, not just something to replay. And there's a theory, which I think is worth taking seriously, that Blizzard is using China as a testing ground. The partnership with NetEase gives them an environment to try big ideas, without immediately having to answer to the Western community, which, let's be honest, will catastrophically melt down over literally anything. Too casual, meltdown. Too hardcore, meltdown. Transmog on a classic server, well, that's me melting down. If Titan Reforged works in China, if the numbers are good, if players stay engaged through all the 11 phases, Blizzard has a blueprint, a proven model, and they know the West wants it, so the forums have been screaming about it since the day it was announced. Titan Reforged is apparently the Classic team's focus for the next year. That's the Classic developer team spending a full year on this project. Whether that eventually feeds into the Western version, or whether it just means the West won't get new Classic content during that whole window, that's genuinely unclear. But the work is happening. If you care about the future of Classic WoW, if Classic Plus is something you actually want, Titan Reforged might be one of the most important things Blizzard has done in this space, possibly ever. It's a proof of concept, a live experiment running in real time, with real players, generating real data, and we're here watching from the outside. Whether it ever comes to the West is anyone's guess. Blizzard hasn't said a word officially, but the fact that it exists at all, that somebody looked at Classic WoW and said, what if we just rebuilt the whole thing? That matters. That's the conversation. Anyway, drop a comment. Do you want this on NA or EU? Would you actually play it? And if Blizzard brought the Western version out, what would you keep and what would you want changed? Anyway, I'll see you around.